Childhood's End is a 1953 novella written by Arthur C. Clarke that was adapted into a miniseries in 2015. But what really stands out to me about it is that there are people that think it's an uplifting story about humanity putting aside conflicts, greed, baseless prejudice, and becoming part of a much bigger universe, enlightenment and ascension. I think it's about space devils that harvest our children and destroy our planet. It's a great example of how the same story can spark wildly different interpretations. I'm going to focus on the miniseries here. I plan to talk about the book in another context later, but this TV adaptation makes some interesting changes and additions to the material that result in not only an askew type of alien invasion story, but also one with new layers of meanings, whether deliberate or just emergent. So after an ominous flash forward, we're in 2016 on what is effectively the last day of human civilization. Communications get scrambled, huge spaceships descend over major cities. It's long since become cliche. But in this case, the self-described supervisor for Earth speaks to people through projections of their dead loved ones, delivering a message of, well...
We're not conquerors. We're enablers. We're going to help you change.
We're calling them the visitors.
No, we're not.
So far, I'm with Chief O'Brien here. This is bad juju. Also, while most people are seeing their dead relatives, all these newspaper staff get the word from the deceased founder of the paper. That has to sting, knowing your friends saw their mom or grandpa, and you got the news from your old boss. The supervisor for Earth, Corellin, chooses Ricky Stormgren, in this iteration of the story of Farmer in Missouri, to be a sort of ambassador or contact person. He seems reasonable, and the Overlords gotta choose someone, right? In their initial meeting, Ricky gets a little more explanation and is told straight up that any ideas humanity may have had about a grand and epic future are over.
But the stars are not for man, Ricky.
There is something seriously fishy about this guy.
I'm thinking I want to see who I'm talking to.
I have to stay where I am.
But he has his reasons for remaining hidden. This adaptation compresses the time frame down to 15 years before Corellin will reveal himself to the world, and during those years he guides humanity to a golden age of peace where no one goes hungry, there's no disease, and everything is just wonderful. Aside from the complete stagnation of science and culture. Everything is easy, so there's nothing to do but enjoy the good times and make babies. And when that day of revelation comes, the whole world is watching to finally see the face of their benefactor. The door opens, blinding light pours out, and then this happens. The spectators don't know what to make of it. Now, these days a lot of people just laugh. The symbolism of big red demons with horns has shifted into self-parody in modern culture. But while I've never been a religious guy, I do very much relate to the symbolism because I distrust anyone that says they have all the answers if only we follow them. Whether it's politicians or space devils, a high degree of skepticism is necessary when dealing with these people. Not least because they're always hiding something. Something that would put us all on guard if we knew what it was. This is the end of part 1 of 3. But there's a detail added in this adaptation that is kind of easy to miss, but absolutely central to the theology, mythology, whatever you prefer to call it, that this story draws on. When Ricky is first taken to meet Corellin, he's given this shiny flask thing.
What is it?
It's a gift.
In the book, Ricky Stormgren is the Secretary General of the UN, and presumably he has some experience with diplomacy and seems like the obvious choice for extraterrestrials looking for an intermediary on Earth. But by transforming the character into a farmer in the American heartland whose only diplomatic experience is helping to negotiate a labor dispute, this production makes the whole intermediary aspect of the story much more interesting. He's set up as an all-around good guy. He's humble, he's compassionate, he's curious, but not to the point of obsession. And he tries to see disputes from the other guy's perspective. He's in perfect transposition between being objective and thoughtful, or his mind being so open that his brain falls out. And that's where this flask comes in. First, Corellin tells him it's a gift. He doesn't command him to take it, it's just lying there on the table. He has to make the decision to pick it up and take it with him. And once he has it, He has to decide whether to open it. He has no idea what's inside, only the word of an entity that won't show itself, claiming he's here to help us.
I might take and just chuck this thing in the river.
If that's what you want to do, then of course.
This could be the selling his soul moment. The key to those stories of devils and tricky contracts is the broader idea of a person being an active participant in their own damnation. The deal can be misleading, but it has to be consensual. And in this instance, Ricky is the proxy for all of us, offered and accepting the role of representative for all humanity, and then offered this in that context. He probably would have opened it eventually. It's why he was chosen amongst all the people of the entire Earth. But feds show up and make everything worse as usual, and they want to take the object.
That's why I'm asking you to hand it over of your own free will.
This is enough to push Ricky over. He palms the cap as he hands it over, opening the container. Immediately, diseases are miraculously cured around the world. The need for humanity, both individually and collectively, to be complicit in our own extinction is a thread that continues throughout this series. There's the case of the Freedom League, an opposition group propagandizing against the Overlords.
And they're happy when Daddy and the other men take them away. I don't know where they go, but I know they're really happy.
Today they'd be attacked by state media for misinformation, but that's not how space devils roll. The Overlords could easily destroy the Freedom League in a track and eliminate sort of way, but they instead engineer a situation to discredit them in the eyes of the public so that we choose our new alien overlords. They create a false binary and make people choose the lesser evil. Corellin can lie, swindle, and coerce, but he never directly forces anyone to do anything against their will. In many ways, this is a story about trading freedom for comfort, about selling one's soul at a steep discount. Or about weak people sacrificing kids to demons if you want to go full Alex Jones with it. And that's why Milo is my favorite character in this thing. In this version of the story, he's a poor kid in the city, confined to a wheelchair. His best friend is this old dude living in a broken down station wagon who kind of picks up the slack as a father figure. But Milo is really bright and curious. After he gets shot by a small-time drug dealer, the Overlords step in and heal him, which also lets him walk. He goes on to become an astrophysicist, one of the last as human science atrophies and dies. Milo never loses his curiosity or his skepticism. He knows that the Overlords have given him his life, but he doesn't blindly accept them. He tries to decipher their language, to unravel their plans, and ultimately he stows away on one of their ships to see their homeworld, which of course looks like hell. Milo gets his answers, at least to the extent that the Overlords themselves know. And he spends his final moments as the last human being in the universe, watching Earth crumble around him as the sequence of events that was set in motion with the Overlords' arrival reaches its end. He was too late to save mankind, but he tried. Unlike so many others, he not only asked the right questions, but was willing to put himself on the line to find the answers. In a different story, he might have been the hero.
Why are we being kept in the dark?
You now have peace, and the way has been prepared for your successors.
But this story is more about lost potential, about everything that humanity could have become being cut off to serve the plans of something else. A story of being active partners in that destruction for the price of living comfortably for a few decades. It's a profoundly tragic story on many levels, at least for those of us on Team Human. Most of the story is told around people who have misgivings about the Overlords, but who nevertheless accept them as such. It's described as a golden age, but in a notable departure from the book, in this version of the story, the signs of a civilization being deliberately wound down are ever present. Arthur C. Clarke's techno-progressive depiction of a future with extensive and rapid air travel and ultra-cheap manufacturing of consumer goods is replaced in the miniseries with a vision heavily influenced by the Paul Ehrlich Club of Rome Malthusian degrowth ideology masquerading as environmentalism that didn't really get going until 20-some years after the book was written. While a handful of chosen elites retain access to modern methods of transportation, the plebes seem to get by with an almost complete absence of motorized transport, to the point that the pilgrims outside Ricky's home no longer have big RVs, but instead arrive on bikes and horses and live in a little fallout settlement across the road. Milo's friend has traded up the old caddy on an abandoned lot for an Airstream trailer in the park, and fresh food is provided for him like a well-cared-for pet. Those who object strenuously enough to these developments are allowed to live in reservations like the city of New Athens, which is also where all the creative types go. But through this time of plenty, there's a slowly building tension. Everyone seems to know deep down that something is off. Even the closest of chosen collaborators start to question what's happening until one day Corellin announces to the world that Judgment Day is upon them.
But the sun sets on even the most glorious of days, and it must now start to slowly sink into the night for you.
The plan is kicking into its final phase. So long and thanks for all the kids. See, all the children born after the arrival, or more likely after Ricky opened the flask, are pulled together into a telepathic link with each other in something Corellin calls the Overmind. Through those children, humanity is said to be ascending to a higher existence and becoming part of this Overmind, the self-reflecting intelligence of the universe. Some would argue that it's God, others might say it's a false god, a demiurge. Maybe it's all just a big soul trap. There's doubtless a long theological argument going on over Zimas and Old Communion wine in abandoned churches all over the world. But I think it's more interesting to consider it in terms of ideology more broadly. Corellin says that his people have been in contact with the Overmind for 100,000 years, but even they don't understand everything. He serves a higher power. Or, as the book states early on, I wish people would stop thinking of me as a dictator and remember I'm only a civil servant trying to administer a colonial policy in whose shaping I had no hand. When we get down to it, Corellin isn't the devil at all. He's a bureaucrat. Just as practically everyone on Earth accepted the Overlords and did as they asked because they seemed so much more powerful, so much wiser, and obeying them delivered demonstrable results very fast, the Overlords themselves have a similar relationship with the Overmind. It commands, compels, very likely rewards, but it needs them to actually do its work. The Overmind seems to be powerless without its servants, otherwise why does it need to send Supervisor Corellin to take over Earth, compel humans to get with the program, and engineer every step of this supposed destiny? While I've talked to people who see this as a story of looking past prejudices on the road to enlightenment and new horizons, I see the banality of evil on a cosmic scale. Ours, and who knows how many other civilizations, bred, harvested, and destroyed by layers of people just doing their jobs, serving the greater good. Corellin came and destroyed everything we could ever have been. But he's on the right side of history. The Overmind told him so.
It is done.